All right, y'all. Part one story time of creepy shit that happened to me as a kid. Okay, so when I was about maybe 10 or 11 years old, me and my mom used to travel back and forth from North Carolina to South Carolina to see one of her closest best friends, and his name was Uncle George for this video. It was Uncle George. So we would go back and forth from North Carolina to South Carolina to see my Uncle George. My Uncle George was kind of like in the streets and he hung around some very sketchy people. So he lived in a little town named Kershaw, South Carolina. And we used to go there, and in Kershaw, if you have ever been to that part of South Carolina, it has like 3 stoplights at the most and a motel. So we used to stay down there at the little motel. I remember the guy that owned it. I think his last name was Mr. Patel. So we used to go and stay in that, little motel. And my Uncle Floyd, that night that we got there, I'll never forget it. Like I said, it was a Friday night. And, he used to be happy to see us every time that we came. And, he used to bring like some friends with him to meet my mom and shit like that because they've been friends for a long time. So, like I said, he lived a sketchy lifestyle. They engaged in illegal activities and did, drugs and all of that type of stuff. But him and my mom were still very close friends. So I'll never forget this night. He bought a friend, and the friend name for this video will be Steven. Okay, Steven was a white guy. He was probably like 5'8". I'll never forget how he looked. He had tattoos all over his body. From first impression, like as a kid, it was cool. He looked cool. Like everything about him was cool. He had like a swagger about himself, very soft spoken. And I'll never forget. Now, keep in mind, back then in motels, they usually had either 1 bed or, 2 beds. So our motel had 2 beds, one for me, one for my mom. So they were all sitting outside the motel room and they were smoking and, drinking, doing what they do. And I was a kid, so I had to stay inside the motel. And I remember when they got done doing whatever they was doing outside, they came inside the hotel. And he was just staring at me. Now, this is my Uncle George's friend, Steven. He was just staring at me the whole time. So my mom ended up saying, "Why do you keep staring at her? Is there like an issue? Is there a problem?" And this man gonna say, "I keep staring at her because I've seen her in many different lifetimes." And my mama looked at him like, "Boy, what is you talking about?" And he started going into detail about his family being Masons and how he was like a 32nd degree Mason and his dad was like a 33-degree Mason master at, some Masonic lodge. So at this point, my mom got very curious because my mom was very spiritual. She was very tapped in with herself as well. She seen stuff, she knew stuff that she shouldn't know. Like she was very tapped in with herself. So at this point, my mom got curious. So she said, "Tell me more." And he said, "Well, long story short is Masons are trying to create the Antichrist." And he said, "If I tell people this, they think I'm crazy. They think I'm crazy." He said, "That's why I do drugs, to stop the thoughts." And she was like, "What thoughts are you having?" And he said, "I hear stuff. I see stuff. I know stuff that I'm not supposed to know." And then she was like, "Well, how do you know stuff that you're not supposed to know if you're a Mason? Like, I'm not understanding what you're saying." He was like, "I unlocked so much knowledge when I agreed to go up the ranks in Masonry." So we was all like, and keep in mind, I'm a kid, so I'm just looking like at this point, like what's really going on. So he started explaining that when he got sworn in as a 32-degree Mason, that he sold his soul to the devil. And when he sold his soul to the devil, he started getting downloads immediately about stuff that he should not know. So I remember like my mom was like, "Oh yeah, nah, we not doing that." Because, we black and we don't play that shit. Sold your soul to who, what, when, where. So my uncle was like, at this point, my Uncle George was like, "Hey, I'm interested, man. Keep talking. Like, what you got going on? Like, I ain't know nothing about none of this." And he was like, "It's something about your little girl." He was like, "I've seen her in plenty lifetimes. She has a old ancient soul." And he looked me in my face and he told me, he said, "In the years to come, everything about you is going to be unlocked. Your powers is going to be unlocked. You're going to be able to know stuff, see stuff." He said, you will be able to see beyond the galaxies. He said, you'll be able to shift time. You'll be able to travel different dimensions. You'll be able to do everything that we're looking for. And one day they're going to come and look for you. So make sure you're ready. At this point, my mom's getting nervous. Like, ain't nobody coming to look for my fucking child. Like, what you got going on? So he continues to go on and talk. And he said, you have a more masculine energy about yourself than feminine energy. He said, don't be afraid of it. Embrace yourself. Become who you're becoming. But he said, your people are going to have to protect you with everything they love. He said, because the older you get, the wiser you're going to get, and the more you're going to know, and the more you're going to see, and the more they're going to come after you. He said, you have a glow about yourself that's almost outer worldly. And I'm just looking at him like, the fuck is he talking about? But the funny thing about everything, like, my whole life, I've always like had lucid dreams. I've always been able to like travel in my dreams. Like, it's weird as fuck. Like, I used to be afraid to sleep by myself because I would see stuff in my dreams that seemed so real, and I would wake up crying, or I would always experience sleep paralysis as a kid. Like, as a little kid, I couldn't move when I was sleeping, and it scared me because I used to feel like something was in the room with me, something was watching me. I couldn't wake up, and I remember I used to think positive and start praying, and I would bring myself out of it as a kid. And so I started thinking about all of this shit that I was experiencing. My mom knew what I would experience, so she was just kind of just sitting there just staring off into space. So he basically told me that I had been here, like, I had been here plenty of times in my life. And every time that I come back, I don't complete what I'm supposed to complete. So I keep coming back. And he said, there's going to be a time that there's going to be a spiritual war against dark and light. And I'm going to be on the light side, and I'm going to play a significant role. And literally, that's all he said. And the last thing he said before he walked out, because at that point, my mom was just telling my Uncle George to get him and they need to leave because she was creeped out. Like, boy, what are you talking about? And he looked at me and he said, when the time come, you'll know when you're ready. He said, trust yourself, believe yourself. And I'm just still looking at him like, as a 10-year-old kid, like, what is he talking about? Y'all, tell me why 2 weeks later, this man unalived himself. He unalived himself 2 weeks later. And I remember my Uncle George calling my mom on the phone, telling her, that he had unalived himself, and he had left a note. And his note said a whole bunch of stuff about him selling his soul and how he couldn't stop the voices and to protect that girl, because all he keeps seeing is what's to come, and they're going to come for her. Protect that girl. Y'all, I've thought about that shit every day of my life. Even nowadays, like, I think about what this man said to me and the fact that he unalived himself based off what he was seeing and what he was feeling. Like, it was just so fucking weird. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this. And I don't really know anything about Freemasons. I've never like done a deep dive on Freemasonry and nothing they got going on because it's never really concerned me. And once I heard that, I was kind of creeped out and wanted to stay away from it because all knowledge ain't good knowledge. But y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. And let me know if y'all want the rest of the parts for creepy shit that happened to me when I was a kid. Because so much weird shit happened to me growing up that some people might think that I'm lying, or some people might think that I'm making it up. But I'm dead ass serious. Like, let me know if y'all want part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of creepy shit that happened to me as a kid, y'all.